there with a brand new update in just the last 30 seconds on what experts say could be the most dangerous storm of the season, churning its way through the Atlantic, set to become a major hurricane in a matter of days. We've got the live track in just a sec. Then the director of ICE set to surge operations in New York City after a raid on one street fueled big backlash. The tensions coming to a head coast to coast. Plus, the new dramatic video coming out of the White House as we speak. The whole East Wing looking like a pile of dirt. What we're learning about the president's expanding ballroom plans in just a minute. And in tonight's original, why one key Senate candidate says he's staying in the race even as he's on defense over an alleged Nazi symbol tattoo. And Billy Joel's seen the lights go out on Broadway. Now you might too. We'll tell you where things stand just hours away from a first in 2 decades theater strike coming up later in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and we are coming on the air with an update from the National Hurricane Center in literally the last 2.5 minutes here. Tropical storm Melissa is now threatening to bring heavy rain, maybe flooding to the Caribbean, with a hurricane watch in effect in parts of the region. And forecasters say it could be the most dangerous storm of the season. Take a look at some of the video just coming into Santo Domingo. Mostly wet and rainy there. It could get worse in a matter of days. The DR, Haiti, Jamaica will probably see colossal amounts of rain, meaning dangerous flooding to islands that are already very vulnerable. Melissa is slowly churning through some of the warmest waters we've ever seen this late in the season in the Atlantic. 2 degrees warmer than usual, 86 degrees. And that warm water is making this storm, its track, its intensity, tough to predict, including whether or not it's going to hit the U.S., the Atlantic coast. Think about what we've seen in the last few weeks with Gabrielle, Umberto, Imelda, all hurricane strength, but none making landfall in this country. Bill Cairns is in the studio now to walk us all through it. So the National Hurricane Center is just out with that update, and I know you think this could be very destructive, Bill. Explain that.
It's in a spot where it has to hit something, Hallie. We had 2 other Category 5 hurricanes that turned harmlessly out into the Atlantic, didn't hit anyone. But this is in a location here stuck between Cuba and Honduras and Nicaragua and Jamaica that it has to hit somewhere. And that's the problem. And as you just showed, the water temperature is like 86 degrees. And it's not just at the surface, it's warm deep down, too. So, I mean, once this thing gets going, the Hurricane Center thinks it's really going to ramp up. It'd be surprising if it doesn't become a major hurricane, and it maybe even a 4 or a 5. So it's walking, maybe not even walking, crawling, 2 miles per hour. This storm is going to be such a slow, annoying mover. It's going to take at least 7 days to even get towards any land areas. I mean, it's almost unheard of to see a storm moving this slowly for this long. There's nothing to push it. There's nothing to pull it. So it's just going to kind of drift here. This is the new forecast out from the Hurricane Center. In the last 2 days, it went from very close to eastern and southern Haiti, or western and southern Haiti, and then it's now shifted more towards Jamaica. So the threat in the Dominican Republic is going down. Still a threat of very heavy rain in Haiti, but the concerns for Jamaica, and then eventually, because I think once we get here, we're going to turn up towards eastern Cuba, those are the areas of greatest concern. But you do notice at the end of the forecast going up to 130 miles per hour, Category 4. So we know the rainfall is going to be life-threatening. Southern portions of Haiti here, this is the estimate. This is 15 inches of rain. Jamaica, almost the entire island, at least 15 inches. And then when it makes that turn towards Cuba, eastern Cuba and the mountains here also could have life-threatening flooding. So that'll likely be the legacy of this storm. Our computer lines are kind of a little squirrely. The red one's kind of the outlier. We do think it goes somewhere near Jamaica for a couple days. All of our spaghetti lines are kind of, all over the place a little bit because there's not a lot of steering currents. But notice nothing goes up towards Miami, nothing towards Puerto Rico. Okay. And finally, here's all our spaghetti lines for, our European model, too. So, Hallie, the U.S. looks safe in this, but this storm is going to leave a mark in many other spots in the Caribbean.
You're going to be tracking it all. I know. Bill Cairns, thank you very much for that. Also tonight, the U.S. military hitting another boat allegedly carrying drugs and cartel members. This is the 8th straight like this in just the last few weeks, the 8th straight strike, we should say. Perfect. Although this one's a little bit different. It's in the Pacific. It's not the Caribbean. And you're looking at video the defense secretary is putting out right here. Pete Hegseth says the boat was moving along what he calls a known narco-trafficking transit route. He says 2 people were killed, meaning now 34 people in all are dead after these kinds of strikes. Strikes that risk escalating a way bigger conflict regionally. Remember, the president has openly told lawmakers that this country is in what he calls an armed conflict with drug cartels. I want to bring in Monica Alba, who is posted up near the White House. I'm old enough to remember, Monica, the first such strike like this off the coast of Venezuela that created some consternation in and around Washington. Now we're on strike number 8 in a different region, too. Explain why that's so important.
Yeah, this is really significant, Hallie, because as you mentioned, the last strikes were all in the Caribbean. This is the first one in the Pacific, which just massively expands where the U.S. could potentially be looking at these various different boats that they allege are carrying these drugs into the United States, and which raises these questions about all of the preparedness that we see currently. We know that there are many troops that are stationed that could potentially, let's say, if this escalated any further, could be involved in something in this region. And this is just really escalating already when you see this expansion to the point of questions that lawmakers are certainly repeating about why this real footprint has expanded and where it could expand to next. Now, remember, the U.S. continually says they feel justified in this. The president certainly says that, and he believes that what he's doing is lawful, while there are bipartisan lawmakers who, again, want to know more information. And it comes, Hallie, as we know, that there are also potentially other operations that the U.S. has been discussing that would target narco traffickers and potentially cartels inside of Venezuela. The question is, could this now go elsewhere? Could it have an even larger reach? Certainly, that is what this now means. And the implications of that would, of course, be huge if there is this further escalation.
And this is also a big issue for the Secretary of State, obviously, who's going to be in Israel later this week, tomorrow here, reading the tea leaves. What does it say about that fragile ceasefire deal? Secretary of State Marco Rubio heading there, the vice president making some news on that front today as well.
Yes, and you had, of course, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, who were the key players in getting at least phase one of this deal across the finish line with the return of the living hostages. And so far, the return of some of the remains of the hostages that were killed and held in Gaza that their families have been demanding the return of. But as you saw, Vice President Vance there, he met with hostage families as well, and he is framing the next phase of this as one that is going to take some time in terms of who will govern Gaza and some of the really key questions that come next as a part of the 20-point peace plan. Here's what he had to say.
It's not about monitoring in the sense of, you monitor a toddler. It's about monitoring in the sense that there's a lot of work, a lot of good people who are doing that work.
President Trump had said that he had issued a warning, very stern warning to Hamas to stop killing people in Gaza, saying that he had even talked to some countries in the region that would go in and would potentially help to eliminate Hamas. Questions exactly on what that means. But to be clear, the U.S. is saying there wouldn't be any U.S. troops on the ground in Gaza for that. But they're trying to just make sure that the fragile ceasefire that's currently in place stays in place. And that's what Secretary of State Rubio will be charged with doing as well. Hallie.
Monica Alba, thank you very much, outside the White House tonight. Also tonight, the acting director of ICE is promising he's going to step up operations in New York, one of the latest places where tensions over the president's immigration crackdowns are boiling over into some chaotic scenes on the streets of U.S. cities. Listen to the director.
I think for the people in New York, they're going to see ICE and our other federal partners do the law enforcement mission. You will see an increase in ICE arrests because there are so many criminally illegal aliens.
Take a look at what happened here. Agents from ICE, some other federal agencies deploying on Canal Street in New York. That's, one of the city's famous streets there, a military-style vehicle in tow. Here you see footage of agents rounding up allegedly undocumented immigrants in an area known for having a lot of street vendors. At points, you saw witnesses yelling, confronting the agents. One of the men that you're seeing here told NBC New York he's an American citizen who was detained by agents briefly just for yelling at them. Across the country, similar scenes of folks pushing back against these immigration operations. In Portland and Oregon, a legally blind man was being dragged by officers during his arrest while protesting outside an ICE facility there. And then there's the story we first brought you last night with updates now. An undocumented migrant in L.A. facing assault charges after he allegedly rammed federal agents with his car. Both the migrant and a U.S. Marshal ended up getting shot by other federal agents. I want to bring in Morgan Chesky, who's following this one for us. And here we have ICE again saying they're going to surge into a city, this time the biggest city in the country, in New York, obviously a heavily Democratic city here, where there is obviously some anti-ICE sentiment, Morgan.
Yeah, clearly, in the protests that followed that raid last night, Hallie, we heard firsthand from people there on the street saying that this is a neighborhood where families walk, and everyone was witness to this raid on those street vendors that, as you mentioned, resulted in the arrests of 9 individuals. DHS saying that they do have criminal histories, including charges of domestic violence, burglary, forgery, counterfeit goods as well. ICE saying that that was the initial catalyst for launching that mission. It was to take these individuals that were suspected of selling counterfeit goods into custody. We have not heard from any of those individuals through their attorneys as of right now, but it did result in quite the scene. I want to share with you a statement that was shared from the mayor of New York City. This was something that he put out before later deleting it online, and it reads, New York City does not cooperate with federal law enforcement on civil deportations in accordance with our local laws. New Yorkers trying to pursue their American dreams should not be the target of law enforcement. Again, that was put out and has since been deleted as a result of that particular operation in New York City. Hallie?
Morgan Chesky live for us there in the West. Morgan, thank you very much for that. Also tonight, explosive new testimony from inside an Illinois court. For the first time, we're hearing from the partner of an ex-deputy accused of killing a black woman in her own home, who says he was actually scared of his partner and not the woman. We're talking about, of course, the case of what happened to Sonia Massey here, with Sean Grayson's partner telling the jury that Massey never seemed to be a threat on the night of July 6, 2024. This is a court sketch of Grayson's partner testifying, just coming into us in the last half hour or so. Remember, Massey had called police late one night, worried about a prowler. This is body cam video of Grayson and his partner responding to that call. Things started getting tense when Grayson asked Massey to put down a pot of hot water that she had grabbed from the stove. You see her walking over to it in this portion of the body cam video. We'll get back to this story in just a second. We'll continue to show you what else happened in that opening statement and the beginning of testimony today in Illinois. But here in Washington, we've got to bring you back over to the White House because President Trump has just opened up what they call a spray. In other words, a discussion that he's having there with the head of NATO. We're going to listen in for just a moment to the president.
We thought it would be a little bit easier. That's turned out to be tougher than the Middle East. The Middle East was supposed to be the tough one, and we've solved that puzzle. But this one will get solved also. So I want to just say it's an honor to have you, Mark. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for hosting again. And we were texting, I think it was on the day when you were in Israel and in Egypt, this tremendous success you had under your leadership, bringing peace to the Middle East. And then we texted each other and said, and the next big thing has to be Ukraine, Russia. And I want to help, NATO wants to help, my colleagues want to help to basically deliver on your vision of peace in Ukraine. And I really want to thank you for everything you're doing, including breaking the deadlock with Putin, starting the dialogue in February when you came in as president in January, but also for everything you did with NATO, the fact that we are now at this 5%, the huge success in The Hague at the NATO summit, the fact that Europeans are also stepping up when it comes to Ukraine, basically the weapons from the US being delivered to Ukraine, paid for by allies, and the Europeans coming together to discuss how can we sustain Ukraine post the peace deal. All of this is evidence of your leadership of pushing the Europeans and the Canadians to do more, to deliver, and to equalize in spending with the US. So on all of this, and today we will talk more on how we can really bring Ukraine to the next phase and get this terrible war, and all the bloodshed ended.
And as you know, we are going to be making a big trip next week. Some of you are going with us. We'll be going to Malaysia, South Korea, and Japan. In South Korea, I'll be meeting with President Xi of China. We'll have a pretty long meeting scheduled. We can work out a lot of our questions and our doubts and our tremendous assets together. So we look forward to that. I think something will work out. We have a very good relationship. But that'll be a big one. We canceled the meeting with President Putin. It didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I canceled it. But we'll do it in the future. But next week we'll be with many of you in those locations that I told you. Then it's back to Washington. So thank you very much, everybody. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, can you tell us a little bit about why you're elevating sanctions against Russia right now?
I just felt it was time. We've waited a long time. I thought that we'd go long before the Middle East. And Mark, as you know, we did the Middle East plus 7. So we did 7 different wars from Pakistan and India to so many,
Azerbaijan, Armenia,
which
Africa.
they said was impossible to do. All these wars I did, and the one that we have left, we have one left. It'll be 9. We have one left, and I think we'll get that done too. I think we're on our way to getting it done.
We have to. Yeah.
Please.
Mr. President, do you have a timeline for when you think this war is going to be over because of your leadership?
No, I don't have a timeline. You can't have in war, it's hard to have a timeline. You know, so many things happen in war. Go ahead.
What about Tomahawk missiles? Putin is definitely
Well,
afraid.
the problem with the Tomahawk that a lot of people don't know, it'll take a minimum of 6 months, usually a year, to learn how to use them. They're highly complex. So the only way a Tomahawk is going to be shot is if we shot it, and we're not going to do that. But there is a tremendous learning curve with the Tomahawk. It's a very powerful weapon, very accurate weapon, and maybe that's what makes it so complex. But it will take a year. It takes a year of intense training to learn how to use it. And we know how to use it, and we're not going to be teaching other people. It's too far out into the future.
Yes,
Mr. President, I saw, Mr. President, that you said as recently as yesterday that you still believe that Putin wants to end the war.
Yeah,
then today
I do.
You took this step to ratchet the sanctions and put more
Yeah.
pressure on him. What else are you going to do to encourage him to get there, or can you explain why you do believe that he wants peace?
Yeah, it's a good question. Today is a very big day in terms of what we're doing. Look, these are tremendous sanctions. These are very big. Those are against their 2 big oil companies, and we hope that they won't be on for long. We hope that the war will be settled. We just answered having to do with the various forms of missiles and everything else that we're looking at, but we don't think that's going to be necessary. We would like to see them just take the line that has been formed over quite a long period of time and go and let's, go home. Last week they had almost 8,000 soldiers killed. Many Russians were killed last week. Many Ukrainians were killed last week. We think it's ridiculous and would like to have it end.
Why do you think he wants peace, though? Why do you still believe that?
I think they want peace. I think they both want peace at this point. It's been, it's almost 4 years. You're going into 4 years. And if I were president, it never would have started. But, yeah, it's time.
Mr. President, on the shutdown, do you plan to meet with Democrats before you head to Asia? And if not, why not meet with the Democrats?
Well, I think it's a shame that it's shut down because we have the greatest economy, as you were saying before. We have the greatest economy in the world right now, by far, the United States. We have almost 18, now it was 17, now it's $18 trillion being poured into our country, and it's no time for shutdowns. I don't think it's affecting what we're doing, but it's too bad for a lot of people. We have a lot of good people that aren't working right now that should be, and it's because the Democrats want to try and renegotiate a deal that they had negotiated. They want $1.5 trillion given to illegal immigrants who came into the country, and it's going to hurt the health care of citizens of our country that have been paying into it, that have been working hard for it, that really deserve it. So we're never going to do that. It's not going to happen. And I will tell you, there are a lot of good Democrats that really want to make a deal. And I think all we need is 5 Democrats because we have great support on the Republican side. So I think we need 5 Democrats, and there are a lot of them that want to make a deal. So I think at some point, common sense will prevail. Yeah, go ahead. You can finish up.
On the drug boat strike in the Eastern Pacific,
Yeah.
can you explain to us what that was about, how it was conducted?
Yeah, sure. Well, they had one today in the Pacific. And the way I look at it every time I look, because it is violent, and it's amazing that the weaponry, that everyone, they have these boats that go 45, 50 miles an hour in the water. And when you look at the accuracy and the power, look, we have the greatest military in the world. We have the greatest weapons in the world. And you see a little bit of it there. One shot, everyone dead center. And the only way you can't feel bad about it is you realize that you won't feel badly about it, is you realize that every time you see that happen, you're saving 25,000 American lives. Every one of those boats that gets knocked out is saving 25,000 American lives, not to mention the torn up families all over the country. And whenever I see that, I say to myself, I just saved 25,000 lives. I will say that there are very few boats traveling on the water right now. Actually, that includes fishing boats. That includes any other kind of boat. But there are very few boats traveling on the water. So now they'll come in by land at a lesser to a lesser extent, and they will be hit on land also. Go ahead, in the back, please.
Do you have legal authority if they do come?
Yes, we do. We have legal authority, right? We're allowed to do that. And if we do by land, we may go back to Congress. But we have, this is a national security problem. They killed 300,000 people last year, these drugs coming in. They killed 300,000 Americans last year, and that gives you legal authority. We have a national security, really, I will say this. When you look at the people we're dealing with, and we know the people coming in, we know the boats, we know everything else. We're allowed to do it. It's in international waters. If we don't do it, we're going to lose hundreds of thousands of people. Now, they'll be coming in by land a little bit more because they're not coming in by boat anymore. There are no boats in the water. There are no more boats. We know the boat almost immediately. You know, it's pretty unusual when you see somebody with a fishing rod and 5 engines on the back of the boat. You know, you don't need that to go fishing. Wait. And we will hit them very hard when they come in by land. And they haven't experienced that yet, but now we're totally prepared to do that. We'll probably go back to Congress and explain exactly what we're doing when we come to the land. We don't have to do that, but I think, Marco, I'd like to do that. You may respond to that if you want.
Yeah, well, I mean, the question is, bottom line, these are drug boats. If people want to stop seeing drug boats blow up, stop sending drugs to the United States.
But does it matter if it's in the United States?
Well, these are all in international waters. The boat.
Do a strike in the United States, or if Northern?
Well, that's a different matter. Now you're talking about a law enforcement matter. In this particular case, there are people traveling on international waters headed towards the United States with hostilities in mind, which includes flooding our country with dangerous, deadly drugs, and they're going to be stopped. And that's what's happening. And in the case last week, you saw there was a submarine. It was a submarine. It was a submersible. That's a drug boat all the way through. We know what these boats are. The president just said it. We tracked them from the very beginning. We know who's on them, who they are, where they're coming from, what they have on them. You know, if you're running drug boats, you're in grave danger.
And drug usage is way down. And drug usage coming from the sea, they call it ocean drugs, a little term that they use, the ocean drugs, is very close to non-existent right now. I wouldn't want to be in one of those boats heading away. You know, they're driving happily to destroy the lives of people, and they end up, that's the end of them. So the ocean drugs and the sea drugs, drugs by sea they call it also, that's almost down to nothing, as you can imagine. So they continue to come in by land at a little bit less because they see something is going to happen. They don't like it. They see something, and they're right. Something very serious is going to happen. The equivalent of what's happening by sea. And we're going to Congress just to tell them what we're doing, just to keep them informed. But we have to do it for national security. We have to do it to save lives.
Secretary Besant said that Vladimir Putin had not been honest and forthright in his talks with you. Just wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your feelings about that. And also, if I may, to Maria Rutte, just your thoughts on whether Ukraine should get tomahawks. Thank you.
Well, I think that in terms of honesty, the only thing I can say is every time I speak with Vladimir, I have good conversations, and then they don't go anywhere. They just don't go anywhere. So in that sense, but no, look, he's fighting a war. He's in a war. That's two very competent sides, and that's the way war is. You never know with war, but I would say that it's time to make a deal. A lot of people are dying. You know, they're not Americans, but they're people. They're souls, and they're dying by the thousands, worst since World War II, and we really should stop it.
And to your other question,
yes. Please.
Sorry, to your other question, this has been consistent from this president when we first met again after your re-election in Mar-a-Lago in November. You said we have to stop the killing. This is close to your heart, and this is your vision. That's why this war needs to end. When it comes to tomahawks or whatever system, it's up to individual nations to decide whatever they want to supply to Ukraine. NATO doesn't take a position, but I can assure you this. When the president called me in July and said we want to again send weapons into Ukraine, paid for by our allies, the Canadians and the Europeans, that was an important moment. And that is now taking place, and the ambassador, myself, we're working hard at this. Already a couple of $1 billion of weaponry into Ukraine from the US, paid for by allies. So I'm not going to comment on about the tomahawks, but when it comes to the U.S. and all the support for Ukraine, it is there and it is close to the president's heart, and I know this.
I will say this, and Mark can say it better than anybody. The European nations and Canada have really pulled together, and it's beyond even that. I mean, it's really beyond that.
I was with the Australians and New Zealanders, Japan. They all.
If you want to really add them up, we could really add them up, but. NATO, basically, European and Canada and a lot of other nations, they've really band together. They are not happy about what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. They're not happy at all. Neither am I.
Mr. President.
Jeff?
Sir, just changing this topic slightly, I see you've got the
model
of the White House and the ballroom. Many people were surprised the entire East Wing is being demolished because you had said initially that the ballroom would just touch or would not.
Well,
touch
certain areas are being certain areas are being left. We determined that after really a tremendous amount of study with some of the best architects in the world, we determined that really knocking it down, trying to use a little section. The East Wing was not much. There was not much left from the original. It was over the course of 100 years, it was changed. The columns were removed, and it was a much different building. Then a story was added on in 1948, 1949. There was a story added on, which was not particularly nice. And the building was very, very much changed from what it was originally. It was never thought of as being much. It was a very small building. And rather than allowing that to hurt a very expensive, beautiful building that, frankly, they've been after for years. You have that. I brought these along so people could see, but it's, there's a relative, nobody's actually seen anything quite like it. I think it'll be one of the great ballrooms anywhere in the world. It's about $300 million. It's set to do many, many things, including meetings of foreign leaders, including the honoring of foreign leaders. You can see this. This is a plan. If it's got tables so that you honor a foreign leader, we have a proper space. Right now, we have a space that with tables holds about 79 people. And this is a proper kind of a thing. Now, what the White House was doing, as you know, is they were putting tents out on the lawn. This is an interior shot of the ballroom. I think there'll be nothing like it. And it's being paid for 100% by me and some friends of mine, donors to it. The government's paying absolutely nothing. We're also working with the military on it because they want to make sure everything's perfect. And the military is very much involved in this. They want to make sure everything is absolutely beautiful. You can see the kind of interiors that we're talking about. That's an interior of the ballroom. And it's the highest level. And you see it goes beautifully with the White House. I mean, the mix is beautiful. So over the years, many presidents have made changes. This obviously would be the biggest change, but this was something they've wanted for at least 150 years. Many of you have gone to the events where they had, as an example, President Xi, or they had, a leader of one of the countries, including the king and the queen from your favorite country.
Absolutely.
Frankly. But where they'd be honored, and they'd be in a tent out on the lawn, and it would rain, and it was a disaster. Brian's shaking his head. You know what I'm talking about. And so I thought I'd bring this out because this is going to be probably the finest ballroom ever built, and we're doing it no cost to the country. It's being the money's being put in by me and donors, very great patriots, actually. And the spirit on the building of it is amazing. We are using little sections of footings and various other things, but that's sort of irrelevant. In order to do it properly, we had to take down the existing structure. The way it was shown, it looked like we were touching the White House. We don't touch the White House. That's a bridge, a glass bridge, going from the White House to the ballroom. Then you get into the lobby of the ballroom, and then you go into the magnificent, the main room. And it's something that has gotten incredible reviews.
And just quickly following up on that, sir. I just want a quick follow-up on that question. Your response to people who say that you haven't been transparent enough about this?
I haven't been transparent?
That's some of your critics feel it should
I've shown this to everybody that would listen. Third-rate reporters didn't see it because they didn't look. You're a third-rate reporter, always have been. So third-rate reporters didn't look, but anybody that asked, these pictures have been in newspapers. They've been all over the place, and, you know, we're very proud of it. It's gotten great reviews. It's gotten really great reviews. So I think we've been more transparent than anybody's ever been.
Why do you believe, Mr. President, that the sanctions that you're announcing today will push Putin to the negotiation?
Well, I don't know that they will. I think that they'll certainly have an impact. They're massive sanctions. It's sanctions on oil. The two biggest oil companies, among the biggest in the world, but they're Russian. They do a lot of oil. And hopefully it'll push, hopefully he'll become reasonable, and hopefully Zelensky will be reasonable too. You know, it takes two to tango, as they say, and we're going to find out. They hate each other. These two people hate each other. You know that better than anybody, and it makes it more difficult than it should be. This should be easier to do, but the level of hatred between Zelensky and Putin is very substantial.
Could I add one thing? What the president is doing today with these sanctions is putting more pressure, of course, on both parties, in this case on Russia. It's all about changing the calculus, making sure that Putin understands that the president's vision this weekend of having a ceasefire, stop where they are, as you literally said, that this has to be step one now. And for him to really accept that vision and to come to the table. And then you have to put pressure, and this is exactly what he did today.
Along with Europe. I mean, Europe, look, they've actually become friends of mine. I think yes. All of them. No. We have a very close relationship, and they want to see it end, too. They really want to see it end. But I can say they're totally committed. If this went on for 10 more years, Europe is behind them. They just can't let that happen. You can't let what's been going on. Now, it should have never happened. It would have never happened if I were president. But it did happen. I inherited. This was Biden, a man who was, without question, you take a look at the new walkway, the Presidential Walk of Fame, we call it. Biden is the worst president we've ever had, if he was even a president. The people that surrounded that desk made those decisions. But this should have never happened. It have happened, but it did happen. I inherited it. We're going to get it ended, hopefully soon. Yes, please.
You had a Truth Social post earlier this afternoon talking about a Wall Street Journal report as a fake story.
Yeah, fake. Sort of Wall Street Journal is fake. So less fake on financial than it is on gossip.
Can you just confirm that my understanding of what's happening is accurate? As I understand it, that story framed it like we had just lifted the U.S. a restriction on intelligence.
No, it said that I gave Ukraine permission to shoot missiles deep into Russia. I didn't do that. Second of all, they're not using our missiles. They're using, I think, European missiles or from someplace, but they're not using ours. And what they do, I don't control that. But I do control our missiles. They're not shooting our missiles in. It was a fake story. Wall Street Journal does a lot of fake stories.
Thank you so much. The president of Colombia, in a recent interview, said that if you won't change, he thinks that people should get rid of you.
We're talking about now Colombia, the country, not the university.
Yes.
Go ahead. He said what?
He said that if you won't change, then perhaps you need to be gotten rid of. Do you view that as a threat?
Well, he's a thug and bad guy. He's a guy that is making a lot of drugs. We've just, as of today, stopped all payments going to Colombia, the country Colombia. Also, the school Colombia. No, we settled. We made a settlement with him. But no, he's a thug, and he's a bad guy, and he's hurt his country very badly. They're doing very poorly, Colombia. They make cocaine. They have cocaine factories. They grow all sorts of crap that's drugs, bad drugs coming into the United States, goes generally through Mexico. And he better watch it, or we'll take very serious action against him and his country. His country is, what he has led his country into is a death trap. Please.
Has the Secretary General presented his Ukraine peace plan to you? Are you prepared to be chairman of the board of peace?
Oh, there is no Secretary General peace plan. But I'm here for, I really want to correct it, because I saw some of that in the media. Of course, many people are thinking how to bring this terrible war to an end and supporting the president in doing that. Why I'm here is to dialogue again with the president how I can be, how NATO, my colleagues and other colleagues in NATO can be of maximum support to get that done. But there is no peace plan on the table. I mean, if there is a peace plan, it is what the president said last Friday and Sunday, which is stop where you are, stop the fighting.
This is about NATO. We're a very proud member of NATO. We have a great relationship with the countries of NATO. I think made much better by our visit a few months ago when they agreed to 5% instead of 2% of GDP. That was a big concession. I think that was a concession that 2 years ago nobody would have said, even a year ago.
Even 9 months ago, before you were elected.
Yeah, they would have said that's not possible. And the difference is they're paying 5% as opposed to not paying 2%. A lot of them weren't paying, with the exception of Spain. I think you're going to have to talk to Spain because they're not. Spain is not a team player. So other than Spain, everybody's 100%. And you could solve the Spain problem very easily, I think, if you want. Brian, go ahead.
The soybean
Yeah, go ahead. And then we'll take Brian. Go ahead.
The soybean farmers, are they going to be getting support from you soon? And your
Yeah, well, they do. So what's happened, you could say with that, you could say with beef, with all of it. The beef, the ranchers, let's say, who have done a great job, have lost their shirts for many, many years. They've really been decimated. And I helped them a lot. I put tariffs on things coming in to the country, including beef. And that gave them a chance to finally have a decent industry. We are going to be talking to them. They're great people, but they've been hurt for 25, 30 years. They've been losing because other countries have taken advantage of them. And by putting tariffs on, they've been able to make a few dollars. They've been able to have an industry. But I also want to keep the beef prices low. So I'll be talking with the ranchers, and I'll be speaking with a lot of different people, including Scott and Howard, and we'll do something. Because prices are way down in our country. Energy is way down. I think you're going to see $2 gasoline very soon. I see that it's $2.50 in a lot of places, $2.50. We were heading to $5, $6, and $7. If Biden didn't go back to my policy toward the end, you would have seen. But he didn't go back to the full policy, and he missed the most important thing. So we were up to, we were way up. I think you're going to see $2 gasoline. We couldn't even break that number. That's a big difference. The only cost that's really up is beef, and the fake news only wants to talk about beef. And what I did is I made it possible for those people to survive.
You have been listening to President Trump there in the Oval Office, making news on a number of topics here. He's opened up. We didn't expect this to open up. He obviously did. Brought in the cameras, brought in that pool of reporters who cover him, the smaller group along there with the head of NATO. I want to bring in both Monica Alba and Ryan Nobles, both of us standing by. And one of the topics he hit on, Monica, very newsy here, the new sanctions now against Russia as the president is looking to try to get, to some degree, Vladimir Putin to come to the negotiating table after that Budapest summit fell apart, Mon.
Yeah, this is a really significant action because it's one that many had been wondering if this was a lever that President Trump was going to pull. And this had always been sort of a White House that would say, well, maybe we may do that. We may do that. We're considering that. And then the news of it actually happening today, and the president and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying that they are sanctioning these companies in Russia specifically because they believe that President Putin has slow-walked any potential for a path to peace, to ending the war in Ukraine. So that is as explicit as it gets, and saying and ultimately calling, Hallie, for an immediate ceasefire to stop the fighting between Russia and Ukraine, which the Russian president has not indicated is at all likely. But it's really notable, of course, because this has a little bit more teeth to it than some of the language that you sometimes see or some of the threats. Remember, the president had given President Putin so many deadlines and had said if those come and go, then maybe you're going to see some real action. There had been the question of secondary sanctions, which would be basically sanctions against the countries that do the most business with Russia. But this is actually targeting Russia itself in a way that will be perceived as a question mark of how President Putin might respond to this. As you know, there is no current meeting on the table between the two leaders. That's right. We'll see how this may affect that.
Stand by for a second, Monica, because I want to get to Ryan Nobles here, obviously our chief congressional correspondent here. And you heard the president, Ryan, talk about what we started the show with, what Monica was talking about not 20 minutes ago here, 30 minutes ago, which was this additional now 8th strike on these quote unquote narco terror traffickers, as the White House and the defense secretary has called them. You heard the president suggest he is going to continue to pound them in what the Secretary of State says is international waters and also on land, suggesting he would go to Congress to not necessarily ask, but to tell them about it. This has been a critique from not just Democrats, but some Republicans as well, that they haven't been properly notified about what action the White House is taking in the Caribbean and now the Pacific.
Yeah, and this has been kind of a slow bleed, and it didn't start in this current version of the Trump administration. Executives going all the way back, you can make the argument with George W. Bush after 9/11, have slowly used military force without congressional authorization more and more and more and more. This is unique because it's a different theater in which the United States has never really been involved or used military force at this high a level. And there are a number of congressional leaders that are very concerned that the president is not looping Congress in these decisions. I mean, what he described there, and it's hard to parse exactly his words, but it sounded like a military attack on the soil of a foreign country. And generally, that is something that Congress needs to approve before it happens. You know, there's a limited scope in which the executive branch has the ability to do. So he was very vague in how he described how he would inform Congress. It did not sound like he was going to ask them for approval to do something along these lines. It sounded more as if he would just send them a letter to let them know something like this was happening, and maybe it happens after the fact, which is much how the attack on Iran happened earlier this year when he struck those nuclear sites. So it'll be interesting to see how Republicans on Capitol Hill in particular, Democrats, of course, I think will be very much opposed to it. But I think even some of the more hawkish Republicans are going to want to be involved in this process, especially because you know, it started with these attacks on these boats in international waters. Right. Now it's moving to foreign soil.
If it escalates to foreign soil.
Right. It could end up being, are we talking, could it become boots on the ground at some point? These are all questions members of Congress are going to want answers to before they fully buy in as to what the administration is doing here.
You also heard, Monica, the president pressed about something we were showing some video of. I'll ask our control room team to put that back up. The demolition of the East Wing at the White House. We've known that the president wants to build this massive ballroom. He talks about it a lot. He showed off the pictures. He showed off, we're looking here at the model. So you're looking at, obviously, the White House to the right on your screen. That is this new East Wing ballroom. We're going to pull out in a second so you can see the whole thing. It's humongous. I mean, it dwarfs the size of the West Wing. And that, to the president, Monica, is the point. He put a new price tag on it, $300 million. But it comes as we've seen some video of the demolition of the East Wing to a degree that was fairly unexpected, considering the president had previously suggested they wouldn't tear the whole thing down. He would add on to it, et cetera.
Hallie, you know I'm obsessed with this because when you cover the White House, so much happens behind the scenes and it's meetings and things that are described to you. You're trying to get more details on. This is happening out in the open, in plain sight, and it does not necessarily, to your point, align with what the president said was going to happen. And it is really striking. These images are the president himself confirming there that basically the architects decided they needed to get rid of the entire East Wing as it stands now in order to rebuild a new East Wing, the White House says, to modernize it and to now make way for this massive, giant ballroom that by that model looks like maybe it will sit atop some potential new offices that they're going to replace. Typically, the First Lady and her staff would work out of the West Wing. Certainly, that's how it used to exist, in addition to some other key aides, the visitor's office, the military aides who work out of the White House, the Office of Calligraphy that does all the invitations, those kinds of things that all have been relocated right now. But that price tag continues to grow, and maybe it will even grow beyond that, because originally it was $200 million. Then last week at a dinner that the president hosted at the White House for some of the donors, which we should note, NBC's parent company, Comcast, is listed as a part of that guest list. Then he said that the price tag was up to $250 million. And now just moments ago, he's saying it's something like $300 million that will be covered by those donors, some individuals, some companies, and the president says by his own funds as well. It's unclear how much each entity is donating here, but we just can't overstate enough, Hallie, how massive of a change this is to the footprint of the White House and how different it will look. And I think it's significant that basically Treasury officials, which is that other building you see there in the model on the side, they told their employees, please don't tweet out photos of this construction as it goes on, because they clearly don't want that out there. They say for security reasons, but we can all see this with our own eyes and see it happening before us.
I think it's a live picture we just showed.
And I can actually hear it. It's literally over my corner.
Yeah, this is it. I mean, this is happening 5:43 Eastern time.
And we're told that the entire demolition of the East Wing will be complete, Hallie, within days.
Monica Alba, Ryan Nobles, thank you for hanging with us during this developing news here. President Trump speaking live from the Oval Office there. Appreciate you both. Coming up, much more to get to here on this show, including what we're learning about how a little plane ended up in the middle of a soccer field. Look at that. Plus, why a tunnel has taken center stage in a hotly contested race for governor in one state. We are just hours away now from the final debate in the high-profile, closely watched New York City's mayor's race. Election day now less than 2 weeks away. You've got Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic frontrunner, set to face off against former Governor Andrew Cuomo, running as an independent, and the Republican Curtis Sliwa just days before the start of early voting. And it's not just New York City, right? This one's getting a lot of attention because of the dynamics involved there. But think about New Jersey, the governor's race there. There's a dead heat contest. You've got a Virginia governor's race. In Jersey, former President Obama is backing the Democrat and the current president, the Republican, in a race that could tell us a whole lot about what voters want on a national level ahead of the midterms next year. I want to bring in a friend of the show, NBC 10 reporter Lauren Make in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Lauren, we are so glad to have you with us as always. And there's a lot of people in the political world who see this New Jersey governor's race as a potential bellwether for Democrats and Republicans that could extend into next year, the next election.
Yeah, Hallie, as you mentioned, this race and those other ones you were just talking about, they're the first chance for us to see some of the first big chances for us to see what voters want and who they are choosing as leaders. It's also a chance here in New Jersey to see how the president's poll works when he's not on the ballot. He did very well here last year. He didn't win the state, but he did better than he did in 2016 and 2020. So people are watching to see if the Republican nominee, Jack Ciattarelli, will be able to hold on to those margins and maybe make New Jersey a little bit more purple. The president has been a factor in this race. A recent Rutgers poll that just came out, I'm at Rutgers right now. First of all, they talked about the actual race with Mikey Sherrill, the Democratic nominee, up 5 points over Jack Ciattarelli within the margin of error. But they also talked about President Trump. 52% of voters in that poll saying that he is a major factor in their vote. And we just drove through North Jersey today. There is a particular issue that he has had a role in, and that's that Gateway Tunnel project connecting New Jersey and New York. Well, the president, as you know, recently said that that project is terminated. That is something that really resonates with commuters heading from New Jersey into New York. One commuter told me today that she was annoyed by the situation. And I spoke with the Republican nominee, Jack Ciattarelli, today about that issue. He told me he has talked to the president about it and that the president knows how important that project is to the region. He did not say whether or not he has gotten a commitment from the president. I asked him, have you gotten a commitment from the president about the federal government's role? He didn't answer that, but here's what he did say. Take a listen.
You're not going to tell me about your conversation with the president. That's okay. If the federal government does not come through on that, what do you do then?
I don't anticipate the federal government not coming through on that project. It's the quintessential federal infrastructure project. It's critically important to the region. It's critically important to the region's economy. And this region's economy is critically important to the national economy. That project's going to get done.
And Mikey Sherrill, the Democratic nominee, has said that the president saying he's terminating this is ripping away jobs and that she would fight tooth and nail to get the funding back. So this is one of the issues in the race and one particularly resonating in North Jersey. Hallie, back to you.
So many eyeballs there on the state of New Jersey. Lauren Make from WCAU, our Philly station. Lauren, thank you as always. Go Birds. Appreciate it. Coming up here on the show, NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day. And because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Midwest bureau, a tractor-trailer crashed, look at this, into a retention pond at a truck stop in Michigan. You see part of the truck's cab there in the water. Police say they think this happened because the driver got out of the truck but didn't put the brakes on. So the truck rolled through, smashed right through that fence you see there before dropping into the water. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. Out of our Western Bureau, look at this, a little plane, small plane, making an emergency landing in the middle of a soccer field in Southern California. It hit a woman walking her dog. Somebody nearby described total chaos at the scene. People were rushing over to help. Incredibly, police say both the pilot and the woman who are expected to be okay. The FAA is looking into this. And out of our Southern Bureau, a museum in Kentucky throwing a birthday party for the big bat. It's I don't know what to tell you guys. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a huge bat, like a big old baseball bat. It stands outside the Slugger Museum in Louisville. That bat is 30 years old. They did it up, man. Look at that cake. They had a singing and hats and a card. The bat can't read it, but, you know, people love it. So congratulations to the birthday bat. To tonight's Original Now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight it's a look at the impact scandals have had on political races in the world today. The topic now front and center, the Maine Senate race, taking a controversial turn over a tattoo on a candidate's chest that's recognized as a Nazi symbol. Our Melanie Zanona reports.
In Maine, a high-stakes Senate race is heating up, causing drama for Democrats, now with an extra twist of Nazi symbolism.
My name is Graham Plattner, and I'm running for U.S. Senate in Maine.
Democratic candidate Graham Plattner running to unseat longtime Republican Senator Susan Collins, under fire for a controversial tattoo on his chest, a skull and crossbones symbol historically associated with the Nazis.
I am not a secret Nazi.
The oyster farmer and military vet saying he got the tattoo in 2007 in an interview on the left-leaning Pod Save America podcast this week, saying he was not aware of the symbol's history when he chose it on a night of drinking while serving in the U.S. Marines.
I can honestly say that if I was trying to hide it, I've not been doing a very good job for the past 18 years.
A video circulating shows Plattner dancing without a shirt at what he says was his brother's wedding nearly 10 years ago. The tattoo on full display. In a statement, Plattner telling NBC News in part, "It was not until I started hearing from reporters and D.C. insiders that I realized this tattoo resembled a Nazi symbol. I absolutely would not have gone through life having this on my chest if I knew that." On Wednesday, Plattner posting a video on social media showing he got the tattoo covered up.
And I got this to cover up the skull and crossbones.
Despite the backlash, some big-name Dems standing behind him.
Impressed that media is so concerned about the tattoo.
Senator Bernie Sanders defending his endorsement of Plattner and bristling when I asked him this.
Do you think it's necessary that he gets it removed or covered up?
Look, once again, we are dealing with a collapsing healthcare system. As a result of Trump's policies, 50,000 Americans may die unnecessarily every year. And you were asking me about whether or not a guy should get a tattoo removed? Sorry.
Plattner also apologized for some old, since-deleted Reddit posts that included downplaying sexual assault concerns in the military.
I made comments that I'm not happy about, that I do not agree with.
The turbulent campaign from the grassroots candidate setting up a showdown for the Democratic primary against a more established current governor Janet Mills, who entered the race just last week with her own powerful backers.
We think that Janet Mills is the best candidate to retire Susan Collins.
With President Trump brushing off scandal after scandal, now candidates on both sides of the aisle bucking critics and sticking in races.
Do you think that scandals are no longer the death sentence that they used to be in political campaigns?
They seem not to be. And that seems to be the biggest difference in this Trump era, with candidates refusing to bow out because they think that they can get beyond this scandal. And many times they're proven right and voters are willing to forgive them.
And another recent tattoo scandal, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth facing tough questions in his confirmation hearings, including about his Jerusalem cross tattoo, a symbol some say is used by religious extremists. Hegseth defended himself, bringing up the funeral of President Jimmy Carter.
On the front page of his program was the very same Jerusalem cross. It is a Christian religious symbol.
And he was confirmed. Now, Democrats are wondering if their oyster farmer candidate can wash away any bad taste.
Mel is joining us now. Bigger picture here. The Senate race in Maine is going to be super closely watched all across the country. Explain that, because the margins in the Senate are pretty tight.
Yeah, Maine is Democrats' best pickup opportunity in the 2026 election. If they don't flip that seat, it becomes mathematically very difficult for for Democrats, I should say, to win back the Senate, because they need to net a total of 4 seats. So that is why this primary has become so critical and quite a dilemma for Democrats. However, that primary is not going to take place until June of next year, so still a long ways to go before they figure it out. Hallie.
That is for sure, and you'll be across all of it, I know, for months to come. Melanie Zanona, appreciate you. Thanks, Mel. Also tonight, right now, we're just a few hours away from potentially a bunch of shows on Broadway going dark because musicians on Broadway and the league are locked in contract negotiations. The musicians, you see here, handing out flyers to people going to shows, threatening a walkout, a walk-off if they don't get to a deal by tomorrow morning. That means a strike could be imminent. Shows could be canceled as early as tomorrow. It'd be the first time we've seen something like this in nearly 20 years. And it's especially important now, look at the timing, because this is right ahead of the busiest time of the year for Broadway, the holidays. And they have had a gangbusters season, one of its most successful seasons yet, filling some 15 million seats on Broadway. The strike would affect, almost tons of shows. Every show you'd want to see. Lion King, Hamilton, Wicked, etc. The list goes on. Emily Aketa is covering this one for us. So here we go. Clock's ticking to tomorrow morning. Where do things stand, Emily?
Well, we're certainly in the 11th hour, Hallie. A lot of eyes on this, because what is a trip to New York City without a stop to Broadway? I've been hearing from so many people who are trying to pack in as many shows while they can. The musicians say they want to see better health care, more health care contributions, better pay, along with job security. And as you mentioned, they're pointing to the recent success of Broadway. This last season, the highest grossing season on record. Also, we're seeing attendance start to recover since the pandemic. The second highest attendance, with millions of people attending and filling theaters like this behind me. You know, what's interesting is oftentimes you might be able to interact with performers, the musicians, the actors after the show. But earlier today at the matinee, you could actually see them out here minutes before going on stage, handing out flyers like these, trying to raise awareness of this potential strike, some of the causes they're trying to raise awareness of. Take a listen here from a keyboardist.
You're supposed to be in the orchestra pit in just minutes, but you're out here doing what?
We're spreading awareness about the musicians and our right to a fair contract. Obviously, people want to come see shows, and we want to play shows for them. But we also have to, make a living and have health insurance and other important things that allow us to live in the most expensive city in the world.
And the Broadway League, which represents the producers and the theater owners, released a statement that says, in part, good faith negotiations happen at the bargaining table, not in the press. We value our musicians, and we're committed to working in good faith to get a fair contract done. We know both sides are currently at the negotiating table, Hallie.
What were the impacts longer term or the last strike we saw? Again, it's been a couple of decades since something like this.
Yeah, exactly. And when they went on strike back in 2007, a strike that was led by the stagehands, we're talking about millions of dollars in lost revenue for the city of New York. This is a cultural touchstone. It's what drives so much tourism here in New York City. And industry experts will point out that the landscape, while we are seeing a bounce back from the pandemic, and it's still challenging because they're seeing rising costs in bringing new productions in particular to life, whether it be in labor, in rent. In fact, the Broadway League says that just 10% of shows right now are profitable. That's about half of historical averages. We know that the Actors Union, which did reach a tentative deal, they made an agreement with the Broadway League over the weekend. They are standing in solidarity, and they say that if the musicians decide to strike, so will they. So will they. Now it's just a matter of waiting and seeing.
I know you'll be all over it. We'll talk again perhaps tomorrow morning. Emily Aketa, thank you very much. Good to see you. Thank you, as always, for watching. That does it for us this hour, but more coverage picks up right now. Tonight, breaking news out of the White House. Another escalation of the president's strikes on alleged cartel boats. For the first time now, a strike on a boat in the Pacific Ocean. But President Trump said in just the last 40 minutes or so, he may ask Congress to greenlight strikes, perhaps in Venezuelan territory. Then the dramatic video coming out of the White House as we speak live tonight. The whole East Wing looking like a pile of dirt. What we just learned about the president's expanding ballroom plans and the brand new price tag. Plus, the director of ICE set to surge operations in New York after a raid on one street fueled big backlash. The tensions coming to a head coast to coast. And the NFL says it is backing Bad Bunny, while the league commissioner is standing firm on Big Bunny at the halftime show, even with some blowback. And health officials in the Southwest sounding the alarm over a spike in measles cases. We've got that live report from Arizona later on in the show. Hey there, I'm Hallie, and we are coming on the air tonight with President Trump seeming to maybe open the door to a major escalation in his fight against drug cartels by suggesting perhaps a strike inside Venezuela. Listen to this.
If we do buy land, we may go back to Congress, but we have, this is a national security problem. They killed 300,000 people last year, these drugs coming in. They killed 300,000 Americans last year, and that gives you legal authority.
It comes as you know, the U.S. military has been hitting boats, including one, as we've learned about just today. The defense secretary putting out this video showing what would be the 8th straight strike like this in just the last few weeks. Although this one's in the Pacific, it's not the Caribbean, so keep that in mind. The video here put out by Secretary Hegseth, and he says that the boat was moving along what he described as a known narco-trafficking transit route. He says 2 people were killed, meaning now 34 people in all are dead in these kinds of strikes so far. That risks escalating a way bigger conflict regionally. Remember, the president has told lawmakers the U.S. is in what he calls an armed conflict with drug cartels. You're seeing that video there. I want to bring in our Pentagon correspondent, Courtney Kuby, who's joining us now. Let's talk through some of this, especially what we just heard from President Trump, because you heard the Secretary of State and the president talk about these strikes so far on international waters. But then the president mused about perhaps hitting them by land. He did not elaborate, Courtney. Have you heard anything about that on your end?
Yeah, and this isn't the first time that the president has even opened up the possibility that there could be strikes on land. He did it during another recent event. But this all follows some reporting that we had last month at how the Trump administration was considering the possibility of strikes on land that would include potentially going after cartels, after cartel leaderships, after some of their drug labs, various targets. But as you know, Hallie, this would be a dramatic escalation, even to the point that the president even mused there that he might go back to Congress and ask for some sort of an authorization or at least notification before taking a strike like that. Now, one difference about the strike today that you mentioned, this is the first time that the military has struck in the Pacific Ocean. The previous 7 strikes against these alleged drug boats were all in the Caribbean Sea. And why that's significant is it is closer over to Colombia and Ecuador. Remember, early on, these strikes, the Trump administration really emphasized that these were boats and individuals coming out of Venezuela. And that has led to some consternation by particularly the Colombian president, who has argued that the United States has killed Colombian citizens, struck at least one boat that was Colombian. And in one case, Hallie, he even accused the United States of murder for one of those citizens who was killed back in September.
And that has led to, when you talk about an escalation, Courtney, it's not just potentially militarily, but also in the diplomatic sense as well. What we've seen erupt in this kind of war of words, right, between the Colombian leader, President Trump, et cetera. It is at a real inflection point, it feels like.
It's actually been pretty remarkable to see how quickly it has escalated, this war of words online, with Colombian President Gustavo Petro giving an interview recently and saying that, seeming to say that the only way to end this escalation was to take out President Trump. Now, he took to social media soon after and clarified and said, look, he wasn't threatening President Trump. He was just saying that the president needed to change his heart, as you can see from his posting on social media there. So he denied that he was threatening President Trump. But President Trump has shot back and has claimed that he is accused him of being directly tied to drug trafficking groups. You can see there, he calls him an illegal drug leader, strongly encouraging the production of drugs in small and big fields. So this has really gone back and forth. So far, we have been watching since the United States acknowledged that there was this next strike that, again, was likely, it was international waters, but it was just given the Pacific Ocean, the Eastern Pacific, it was likely closer to Colombia than the other ones have been.
Yeah.
So we're waiting to see if we hear any more from the president of Colombia or any other senior officials there.
Courtney Kuby, always busy on your beat, and tonight no less so. Thanks, Court. Appreciate that. We've got some other dramatic video just into us, even live as we speak, as we're learning the whole east wing of the White House, it is being demolished. It's being pulled down. Look at this. Crews tearing down that part of the building, originally built in the early 1900s, as part of the president's many multi-million-dollar plan to build a new ballroom there. The latest price tag we've learned in just the last hour, $300 million. Want to show you the president just in the last hour showing off pictures of what this ballroom would look like. Some renderings, some blueprints. You see the gilded interior at one point as he was showing off right there, pictures to people who were inside the room. By the way, He was in the Oval Office for a separate meeting related to NATO. It wasn't a ballroom meeting, but the model was right there on the table. You got the sense the president wanted to share a lot of this. It's a significant expansion than what we initially heard from President Trump when he said months ago that this ballroom wouldn't interfere with the current building. He said it'll be near it, but not touching it, and pays total respect to the existing building, which I am the biggest fan of. We should note here that the parent company of NBC Universal, Comcast, is included on a list of top donors to the project. It's not clear how much Comcast and some of these other donors contributed. Monica Alba is all over this one. You have been following this from the jump, Monica. What's happening with the East Wing of the White House, obviously historically important, and part and parcel of the president having sought to put his own stamp, not just on the East Wing, but so many parts of the White House as well.
All over, Hallie. Essentially every corner, from the Oval Office to the Cabinet Room to the Rose Garden, the Palm Room, those major flagpoles, one of which you can see over my shoulder here, that he had installed both on the North Lawn and the South Lawn. This is a president who has been trying to put his stamp on every piece of the White House, but his pièce de résistance here is this massive ballroom, is something that really is going to cost millions and millions of dollars, he says, through those private donations and through some of his own funds, though it's unclear how much he would contribute to this. But there are real questions about what happens now, because the White House did not submit this plan through the normal approval process. Now, the White House is such a unique address and place that it doesn't really have to get approval from any specific agency in order to go through with some of this. I'm told by a White House official that they actually will submit the plans at some point, and that they believe that they didn't need to submit them in order to have the demolition phase, but that they will plan to at least have them be reviewed by some of these historical agencies that normally would be a part of major renovations once the actual construction begins of the new ballroom. And in terms of the size, Hallie, this is supposed to accommodate parties or events of up to 999 people. And this is something that President Trump talked about doing way back years ago. Even when former President Obama was in office, he offered to do a ballroom. In his first term, he talked about it as well. Now he's actually doing it. And the East Wing itself is where the First Lady would have her office, where her staff would work out of, some other aides. All of those people have now been relocated to other parts of the White House building and to the Eisenhower Executive Office building, where they are going to work for now. And it's unclear what the new East Wing could look like once the ballroom is actually built. We don't know where those other offices might go. The White House hasn't shared all of those kinds of details, but it is a really significant and jarring window into how this president is totally remaking the White House in his image. Hallie.
And just super quickly, Monica, what's also interesting are the echoes of Mar-a-Lago, a place that the president obviously feels very comfortable, his South Florida home that you see in, there's a ballroom there. You look at what he did with the Rose Garden, for example, and the patio at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, there are some similarities, perhaps.
The Mar-a-Lago-fication of the White House is absolutely accurate. That is exactly what has been happening. And we know when you talk to his staff, the president and the First Lady love spending time in West Palm Beach at the Mar-a-Lago estate. And so they wanted to bring a piece of that to the White House, and that is what he has been doing. In fact, working with some of the same people, wanting to get all of that gold in there that you see throughout Mar-a-Lago down there is certainly reflected now in all these moves.
Monica Alba, thank you. Appreciate that. We got to get to this National Hurricane Center warning that came in just the last maybe 80 minutes or so. Tropical storm Melissa threatening to bring a ton of rain, some flooding maybe to the Caribbean, possibly set to become the most dangerous storm of the season. We've got some video into us from Santo Domingo. It's just really wet right now. Obviously, the water's starting to rise. It could get a lot worse in the days to come. Melissa is a slow mover, but this storm is expected to turn into a hurricane over the next few days. It's barreling toward the DR, Haiti, Jamaica, through some of the warmest water we've ever seen this late in the season at the Atlantic. 86 degrees, 2 degrees warmer than usual. It may not seem like much, but it is enough to make it really hard to track this storm, to predict its intensity, for example, because of its churn. Bill Cairns is joining us now to walk us through it. There's a couple of different scenarios that could play out with the storm. One you don't want to see, one you want to see even less, right? Which is looking more likely?
It's looking like this is going to become a beast of a storm. I'd actually be more surprised if it doesn't reach Category 5 than I would be if it reaches Category 5 at this point. And that would likely be sometime in the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday time frame. The reason why is, as you mentioned, 86-degree water. It only takes like 78 to 80 for a storm to intensify. So this is some of the warmest water on the planet, and the upper-level winds are going to be perfect. They're going to be extremely light. That hurricane loves that. So, yeah, this should be all systems go by the weekend. And because it's moving so slowly, slowly, anywhere that's near this thing is going to be impacted, maybe even significantly if it's that strong. So right now it's 50 miles per hour. This is about as weak as it's going to get. And they don't expect a big jump tomorrow. We expect that rapid intensification more as we head towards the weekend. And it's just a slow crawl. You know, this is a sailboat, you know, with no wind. And so it's just drifting out here in the Caribbean. There's nothing to push the storm anywhere fast, so it's just going to sit here. If this is a little further north, closer to Jamaica, you know, going this slowly, this could be devastating for the island. We're hoping it's going to be more to the south, so that'll be one of the huge stories to watch in the days ahead. Even though it's not going to make a direct impact into Haiti, because of the mountains, the upslope here, we are going to get significant rains. This is up to 15 inches of rain. Whenever it pours that hard in Haiti, we get major flooding problems. Same goes for eastern Cuba. And as far as our computer models go, most of them are going south of Jamaica and then a turn towards eastern Cuba, like 7 days from now, Hallie. And as far as the East Coast goes, this big trough on the East Coast should protect us from Melissa. We'll have another storm to deal with, but hopefully that keeps Melissa away from our eastern seaboard.
Keeping you busy all the time. Bill Cairns, thank you, friend. Let's take you overseas now to Paris, because the Louvre is finally back open to the public today for the first time since that insane jewelry heist. And imagine what that must have been like, being at the museum today, walking past, look at this blocked off section. You can't get into it, where the thieves had busted into a few days back. I mean, that's like a tourist attraction in and of itself right now. Right? I mean, look what happened in there. This video that French media says is apparently the moment that this heist went down, that one of the suspects potentially in that bright yellow neon vest. The fact that this happened in the middle of the morning, after the museum was already open, so fast, has really put French security under this massive spotlight, with people pushing the government for answers on how this could have happened. And the museum's director, fallen on the sword, telling French lawmakers she'll take the blame for what she's calling this terrible failure.
If we're talking about the weak points, our weakness is that deeply we were not able to spot the arrival of the thieves sufficiently in advance. The weakness of the protection of our perimeter is known and identified.
Well, and you saw what happened, what the outcome was. I mean, prosecutors say the suspects got away with gold, emeralds, sapphires, diamonds, tiaras. They dropped a crown on the way out. They got necklaces, etc. Raf Sanchez is in Paris, where people can go into the Louvre now. And it's fascinating that they're, able to sort of walk around right where this incredibly high-profile theft went down. This thing that feels like something out of the movies, and still no idea, right, where these suspects are, or more importantly, perhaps, where these priceless crown jewels are.
Yeah, Hallie, so all day we have seen people lining up here in front of the iconic pyramid in front of the Louvre. And as the French would say, there is a certain added frisson to visiting this museum today, because you have, one, the chance to see the world's most famous art. The Mona Lisa is in there. But you now also have a chance to get a glimpse at what is, frankly, the world's most famous crime scene. And people were really buzzing at it. They've been reading about it for days, and now they're going inside. Take a listen to what one tourist told us.
It was kind of exciting, and I'm very confused as to how somebody could have gotten in there and stolen anything. But so very sneaky, but it was, yeah, the energy and the buzz was kind of interesting, because you wanted to know how they did it.
Now, Hallie, there are some 8 miles of gallery inside the Louvre, the world's biggest museum, all of them open except for the Apollo Gallery. That is where the crown jewels were kept until those infamous now 4 minutes when those thieves burst in on Sunday and carried out $102 million worth of crown jewels, we are now told by prosecutors. Hallie.
And still no idea where they are, right? No leads that have been publicly released.
No leads, and the borders inside the European Union are largely wide open. So it is entirely possible, Hallie, that they could have left France without actually passing through any border control at this point. The director of the museum appeared in front of the French Senate. Take a listen to what she had to say.
We have an aging infrastructure that does not allow, if I may say so, to implant modern and last-generation equipment in terms of video and surveillance on an infrastructure that just cannot handle it.
So the race really on now, Hallie, to try to find not just the thieves, but also find the jewels. And what experts fear is that they are going to be cut up into smaller pieces, because that will make them much easier to sell on the black market.
And on top of all that, Raf, too, that accountability layer that you're talking about as well. Raf Sanchez, outside what was already a world-famous tourist attraction, and perhaps tonight even more so. Raf, thank you. Back here at home, you've got the acting director of ICE today promising he's going to step up operations in the biggest city in the country, New York, one of the latest spots where tensions over the president's immigration crackdowns are boiling over into some chaotic scenes. We're going to show you those, but first, I want you to listen to what the director had to say.
You're going to see ICE and our other federal partners do the law enforcement mission. You will see an increase in ICE arrests because there are so many criminally illegal aliens.
Take a look at this. Agents from ICE, some of the other agencies deploying on Canal Street in New York. This is a pretty famous street. It's got a lot of, street vendors on it, if you've ever been through this part of town. You see footage of agents rounding up allegedly undocumented immigrants, some of whom were, in fact, vendors. Witnesses yelling, confronting the agents. The man you're seeing here told NBC New York, you're about to see, he's a citizen and that he was detained by agents for yelling at them. Across the country, similarly tense scenes. In Portland, in Oregon, a legally blind man was seen being dragged by officers during his arrest while protesting outside an ICE facility there. And then there's the story we first brought you last night as breaking news, with some updates now. An undocumented migrant in L.A. facing assault charges after he allegedly rammed federal agents with his car. Both the migrant and a U.S. Marshal ended up getting shot by other federal agents. Morgan Chesky is following all of this for us. So let's start with this pledge, this promise to surge more ICE agents to the country's biggest city, a Democratic heavy city, obviously in New York, even after some of the backlash that they've seen in some of those places.
Yeah, Hallie, the videos from Canal Street in this raid last night are very telling in what we can anticipate potentially in the days and weeks to come. And bystanders say that these agents rolled in with some heavily armored vehicles and then began taking multiple street vendors into custody. DHS, for their part, says that this was a targeted operation on vendors that were selling counterfeit goods. They say that they took 9 individuals into custody, and they say that their criminal histories include charges ranging from robbery and forgery to domestic violence and assault as well. No official word from any of the attorneys representing those individuals. I do want to share with you a statement from Mayor Eric Adams that he put out on his X account. It reads in part, New York City does not cooperate with federal law enforcement on civil deportations in accordance with our local laws. New Yorkers trying to pursue their American dreams should not be the target of law enforcement. He has since deleted that tweet, Hallie, but that certainly is, I think, indicative of how local officials there in New York have reacted to that recent raid there on Canal Street yesterday.
And then in the West, where you are, obviously Portland has also seen some backlash to the president's immigration operations there. We just showed that video of a legally blind man being dragged by officers. What's the explanation of what went down there?
Well, it depends on who you ask, Hallie. And what's interesting is that DHS has responded to what this individual has said. Real quickly, though, I want you to hear directly from him. He had a chance to speak to our affiliate in Portland recently, describing that encounter with those ICE agents. Take a listen.
I'm only 4'6" and I can't see. What harm was I going to do to them? And they started to drag me across the driveway on the ground, being dragged across the ground when you can't see what's happening around you.
And here's the response from DHS on that video we all watched, saying that this rioter, referring to that blind man, was arrested after he blatantly disobeyed federal law enforcement orders to remain off federal property, obstructed law enforcement, and continued to block the driveway so vehicles could not enter or exit the ICE facility, creating a public safety threat for our officers and detainees. We know that there is a presence of those officers remaining in Portland, as there is here in Los Angeles. And that's where things stand as of right now. But still, that nationwide tension, very palpable here, Hallie.
Yeah, clearly. Morgan Chesky, thank you very much. Also tonight, explosive new testimony from inside an Illinois court. For the first time, we're hearing from the partner of an ex-deputy who's accused of killing a black woman in her own home. The partner says he was actually scared of his coworker and not the woman, Sonia Massey. Sean Grayson's partner, you see him here in this court sketch, is telling the jury tonight that Massey never seemed to be a threat that night last July. Massey had called police, remember, late one night. She was worried about a prowler. This is body cam video of Grayson and his partner responding to that call. Things started getting tense when Grayson asked Massey to put down a pot of hot water that she had grabbed from the stove. So this is her. You see her walking over to it in this part of the body cam video. We'll show you a video of the next moment when Grayson fires his gun at Massey 3 times. We've got to warn you, it is obviously hard to watch.
You better I swear to God, I'll shoot you right in your face.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Drop the pot! Drop the pot!
Now, prosecutors say this body cam video proves that Massey was not actually a real threat to Grayson. But Grayson's attorney argues that his client's actions were reasonable under the circumstances. Grayson has pleaded not guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder. Maggie Vespa is outside court. As court, Maggie, has just wrapped up in the last hour or so. And that very notable testimony today from Grayson's partner. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, Hallie, that was explosive. He took the stand late in the day. His name is Deputy Dawson Farley, and he basically was immediately questioned by prosecutors. He was a witness for the prosecution about Sonia Massey and his feelings about what she did when she had that pot of water. They were asking him things like, were you nervous based on what she was doing? He said no. They said, were you worried she was going to hurt you? He said no. Then he went on to clarify that he was indeed scared that night, but not of Massey. Instead, he said he was scared of his partner, Sean Grayson. There were protesters out here earlier today. We relayed that tidbit of information to them from our producer inside the courtroom. This was the organizers' reaction.
If your own partner was afraid of you that night, that means that you were unhinged. That means that you had no business being on the police force. Your job was to protect and serve, and if your own partner was afraid of you, Sonia didn't have a chance. With Sean Grayson being in her house that night, it was the devil at her doorstep.
The devil at her doorstep. Hallie, after that testimony, for the first time during this trial, prosecutors in there played the body camera video that we've all seen that's been seemingly around the world tied to this case. And our producer said it was really heavy in that courtroom. One juror appearing to cry, another one covering their eyes with their notepad. Grayson, during most of it, looking down at his lap and appearing, our producer said, to cover his ears at the moment of the shooting. This is members of the Massey family were led out of the courtroom sobbing. Now, again, as you said, Grayson's team saying that he was reasonable to fear for his life in that moment. They've been urging jurors throughout this process to not form opinions too early and to think about what it must have felt like in the heat of the moment. And again, they argue that he genuinely feared for his life. But as you can see, Hallie, prosecutors doing everything they can to tear that rationale apart.
Maggie Vespa live for us there in Illinois. Incredibly dramatic day there in court. I know you'll be following the rest of it as it continues. Maggie Vespa, thank you. Here in Washington, in just the last several minutes, the Senate's voting down a bill to end the government shutdown. So that no huge spoilers. Shutdown's still going. It's the 12th time these votes have failed. And gang, there is not an end in sight. If you say you know when the shutdown's going to end, go buy a Powerball ticket, because honestly, this has been one of the things in Washington. This thing is stretching on. It's coming as California's governor now says he will deploy the National Guard to handle a shortage in food bank money. With the shutdown about to hit low-income families hard, not just in California, but across the country. That's because you've got a bunch of states warning that SNAP benefits, a.k.a. food stamp benefits, could run out just 10 days from now, starting then. And it's happening at what could be kind of the worst time for food banks. This is usually their busiest time of year. Think about it. It's October. You got Thanksgiving coming up. This is a time when you see a lot of need. You've got some furloughed federal workers who aren't getting paychecks right now, finding themselves turning to the food banks, too. Here in Washington, our D.C. station caught up with one federal employee who didn't want to be identified. She said she was in line at a food bank, right, despite more than 2 decades of serving in the military.
I have to admit, this is the first time I've ever taken advantage of something like this. I've not been in this predicament ever. I served 21 years in the military. I've been a federal government employee for the past 2 years.
Military veteran there, a government worker, and that gives you a sense, Ryan, of some of those impacts we started to see. Because listen, at the beginning of this thing, what were the impacts? It was like, you know, the zoo, the Smithsonian museums were closed, the zoo was closed. It's a bummer. It's not, you know, food, shelter, et cetera. And, now you're starting to see this cut even deeper, potentially.
Yeah, this is real life. People are going to go hungry as a result of this shutdown if it continues to go any longer. You're talking about 5 million people in California, 3 million people in Texas, close to 3 million people in New York. The list goes on and on of the millions of people that receive federal benefits that basically sustain them and keep them alive. But the question is it resonating all on Capitol Hill? And the answer is no.
And you can definitively say that.
Right, and it's not because they don't recognize that this is a problem. The issue is that they're blaming each other for this problem. So they're using these numbers that we're showing you, they're using these stories of the people that are impacted by this to say, hey,
look what the other side's doing.
Democrats need to fix this, or A, Republicans need to fix this. And so I don't think that their positions have moved even an inch from where we were before the shutdown. And these stories have yet to resonate in a way that's making one side say, okay, all right, I've had enough. We got to figure this out. Instead, it's hardened their positions, and that's why it could go on for much longer.
Well, what does that mean, though? Can you put any sort of concrete number on what much longer means? Days, weeks, months?
No, my guess is weeks. I'm pretty confident right now, and I'd love to be wrong, that this will break the record of 34 days.
Wow.
Because there are definitive pressure points between now and that record-breaking time that I think is going to compel them to move off their current positions. What's interesting is that the record coincides with Election Day. And this isn't a huge election across the entire country.
It's an off year, yeah.
There are two important elections in New Jersey and Virginia, which there are competitive races in both states. And if one party does really well, maybe that's a wake-up call to the other party to try and do something, just because it's the first chance that we'll have to really get a litmus test from voters. But, you know, the way our elections have gone over the past decade or so, they've always been extremely close. It's been really difficult to interpret some sort of mandate as to how voters feel about it. So I'm not even saying that that's the definitive time, but my sense is it goes at least until then, because these lawmakers have yet to feel the impact in a way that makes them think that their constituents are begging for them to end. In fact, in many respects, they're telling me, my constituents are saying, keep up the fight.
That's so interesting. Ryan Nobles, you're on top of this one, I know, on your beat there on the Hill. Good to see you. Appreciate it. Still ahead for us on the show, how the Coast Guard saved a family stranded on an island for nearly 2 days after their boat caught fire. It is a wild story. Plus, how police officers in New York saved a choking baby's life. Tonight, the NFL wants you to know it is not even considering dropping Bad Bunny as its Super Bowl halftime performer. Roger Goodell, you know, the commish, he said today he's standing firm on the decision to put Bad Bunny on the stage, what's arguably the biggest stage in the world, on the Super Bowl. Listen.
I'm not sure we've ever selected an artist where we didn't have some blowback or criticism. It's pretty hard to do it when you have literally hundreds of millions of people that are watching. But we're confident it's going to be a great show. He understands the platform that he's on, and I think it's going to be exciting and a united moment.
Goodell standing by that pick, even after, as you know, we saw some, like President Trump, some of his supporters criticizing Bad Bunny as NFL's choice. Remember, he mostly sings in Spanish. And Bad Bunny's been pretty vocal about disagreeing with some of the president's policies. Stephanie Gosk has more.
So there had been some calls for the NFL to remove Bad Bunny as the halftime entertainer during the Super Bowl. But today, clearly, Roger Goodell was not having any of it, came out of this NFL meeting and said full-throatedly that Bad Bunny is going to stay. He said, and you made mention of this, that it was going to be a unifying and exciting moment. Well, the decision to choose Bad Bunny has not exactly been unifying. There were immediately calls for him to be removed. Now, for those people who may have been living under a rock and don't know who Bad Bunny is, he is simply one of the biggest musicians in the world today. He's Puerto Rican. He performs sometimes and mostly in Spanish. He has been very critical of the Trump administration. And most recently, he did a residency in Puerto Rico. And one of the reasons he said he did that was because he was concerned that if he would go on a regular tour in the U.S., that ICE agents were going to show up at his shows and potentially arrest some of his fans. Well, in response to the NFL's decision to select Bad Bunny for the halftime show, an official in the Trump administration who works for Homeland Security said that ICE agents were actually going to be sent to the Super Bowl and would make arrests if they needed to. Now, that caused quite a stir, and then a number of people and news agencies tried to get confirmation of what the Department of Homeland Security was going to do or not do at the Super Bowl. And they wouldn't say anything about sending ICE agents. But either way, you've got the commissioner of the NFL saying, you might pressure me to try to pull this guy, but I stand by the decision. He also mentioned that there's never been a musician who's been selected that absolutely everybody supported. Back to you, Hallie.
Stephanie Gosk, thank you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the Coast Guard rescuing a family stranded for more than a day on an island just off Cape Cod. It is wild. 3 people had to be airlifted to the hospital. It's not clear yet how they're doing at this point. But they landed on the island after the boat caught fire Monday, so they had to swim. They literally had to swim off the boat and try to get to some land. The boat's radio washed up on the shore this morning, which let them send out a mayday call. That's how they ended up rescued. Number 2, at least 46 people have been killed after 2 buses collided in Uganda. It was a head-on crash, just horrific to see. Investigators say the buses were going in opposite directions. The crash created a chain reaction on one of the country's busiest highways. Leaders say it's one of the deadliest accidents in decades out of this part of Africa. Number 3, Vermont police right now are looking for a college student who's been missing for days now. This is an urgent search for Leah Smith. She's 21. You see her here. Reported missing Sunday. Police say she was last seen on Middlebury College's campus Friday night. Investigators are trying to figure out potential search areas. They're using things like drones to try to find her. Number 4, the trial for former NFL quarterback and current Fox Sports analyst Mark Sanchez is locked in December 11th. His legal team and prosecutors showed up for a short hearing today in Indianapolis. Remember, Sanchez is accused of allegedly attacking somebody there earlier this month. He himself was stabbed. He's recovering at home. He didn't go to the hearing. He wasn't required to. Number 5, NYPD officers saving a choking baby after he stopped breathing. Just so scary to see. Look at this body cam video.
He's not showing color though, so
please.
He's good.
He's good. He's good. God, never been so happy to hear a baby cry, right? You hear the officers patting his back. The baby then is able to breathe. They say the 10-month-old was actually unresponsive when they arrived, but they managed to dislodge whatever was stuck in his throat. Just incredible. Also tonight, health officials are sounding the alarm with measles outbreaks across the country, infecting more and more people. You've got 120 people now sick near the Utah-Arizona border, according to the CDC. It's been affecting that community since August. The second biggest cluster of cases we've seen this year after that really bad outbreak in August. Then across the country in South Carolina, an ongoing outbreak has affected 20 people so far. With public health officials today say they're giving out free vaccines. You can come, you can get your shot, you don't have to pay anything for it. But they say they're pretty disappointed by how low the turnout has been. The latest count by the CDC shows some 1,600 measles cases in almost every state, 41 of 50. That's the highest it's been in 34 years. This is like generational right now. Erica Edwards has made her way to Arizona for us tonight. And here again, a similar story that contains some echoes to what we saw in Texas. Largely unvaccinated communities that are seeing these really intense outbreaks.
That's right, Hallie. I'm actually standing right in the epicenter of this current outbreak. It straddles 2 states. Right here on this side of the street is Arizona. On the other side of the street, it's Utah. This is a very close-knit community, and they sort of go back and forth, and that's the reason for some of that spread. Now, vaccination rates weren't great here before the pandemic, hovering around 90%, but since 2020, they've really plummeted. Here in Mojave County, Arizona, vaccination rates are at about 78%. Across the street in Washington County, Utah, the rates are about 79%. Now, those numbers are not lost on local health officials here. I spoke with the representative of the Southwest Utah Public Health Department. He said an outbreak like this was never a matter of if, it was always going to be a matter of when. Take a listen. This is a community and a county that has really low vaccination rates, 80%. Are you surprised this happened?
Not really. In fact, we were kind of preparing for it. We've worried a little bit about that because you need at least 95% vaccination rates to protect your community against measles.
123 cases known anyway so far in this area. Officials here say that they think there's probably hundreds more that have not been diagnosed. Of the known cases, most are unvaccinated school-aged children. Hallie?
Erica Edwards right there on the border between those 2 states for us tonight. Erica, thank you for being there. Appreciate that. Still ahead tonight, what else we're learning about how this small plane ended up in the middle of a soccer field. Plus, why a tunnel has taken center stage in a hotly contested race for governor in one state. We are just hours away now from the final debate in the high-profile, closely watched New York City's mayor's race. Election day now less than 2 weeks away. You've got Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic frontrunner, set to face off against former Governor Andrew Cuomo, running as an independent, and the Republican Curtis Sliwa just days before the start of early voting. And it's not just New York City, right? This one's getting a lot of attention because of the dynamics involved there. But think about New Jersey, the governor's race there. There's a dead heat contest. You've got a Virginia governor's race. In Jersey, former President Obama is backing the Democrat and the current president, the Republican, in a race that could tell us a whole lot about what voters want on a national level ahead of the midterms next year. I want to bring in a friend of the show, NBC 10 reporter Lauren Make in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Lauren, we are so glad to have you with us, as always. And there's a lot of people in the political world who see this New Jersey governor's race as a potential bellwether for Democrats and Republicans that could extend into next year, the next election.
Yeah, Hallie, as you mentioned, this race and those other ones you were just talking about, they're the first chance for us to see some of the first big chances for us to see what voters want and who they are choosing as leaders. It's also a chance here in New Jersey to see how the president's poll works when he's not on the ballot. He did very well here last year. He didn't win the state, but he did better than he did in 2016 and 2020. So people are watching to see if the Republican nominee, Jack Ciattarelli, will be able to hold on to those margins and maybe make New Jersey a little bit more purple. The president has been a factor in this race. A recent Rutgers poll that just came out, I'm at Rutgers right now. First of all, they talked about the actual race with Mikey Sherrill, the Democratic nominee, up 5 points over Jack Ciattarelli within the margin of error. But they also talked about President Trump. 52% of voters in that poll saying that he is a major factor in their vote. And we just drove through North Jersey today. There is a particular issue that he has had a role in, and that's that Gateway Tunnel project connecting New Jersey and New York. Well, the president, as you know, recently said that that project is terminated. That is something that really resonates with commuters heading from New Jersey into New York. One commuter told me today that she was annoyed by the situation. And I spoke with the Republican nominee, Jack Ciattarelli, today about that issue. He told me he has talked to the president about it and that the president knows how important that project is to the region. He did not say whether or not he has gotten a commitment from the president. I asked him, have you gotten a commitment from the president about the federal government's role? He didn't answer that, but here's what he did say. Take a listen. You're not going to tell me about your conversation with the president. That's okay. If the federal government does not come through on that, what do you do then?
I don't anticipate the federal government not coming through on that project. It's the quintessential federal infrastructure project. It's critically important to the region. It's critically important to the region's economy. And this region's economy is critically important to the national economy. That project's going to get done.
And Mikey Sherrill, the Democratic nominee, has said that the president saying he's terminating this is ripping away jobs and that she would fight tooth and nail to get the funding back. So this is one of the issues in the race and one particularly resonating in North Jersey. Hallie, back to you.
So many eyeballs there on the state of New Jersey. Lauren Make from WCAU, our Philly station. Lauren, thank you as always. Go Birds. Appreciate it. Coming up here on the show, NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day. And because it can be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Midwest bureau, a tractor-trailer crashed, look at this, into a retention pond at a truck stop in Michigan. You see part of the truck's cab there in the water. Police say they think this happened because the driver got out of the truck but didn't put the brakes on. So the truck rolled through, smashed right through that fence you see there before dropping into the water. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. Out of our Western Bureau, look at this, a little plane, small plane, making an emergency landing in the middle of a soccer field in Southern California. It hit a woman walking her dog. Somebody nearby described total chaos at the scene. People were rushing over to help. Incredibly, police say both the pilot and the woman who are expected to be okay. The FAA is looking into this. And out of our Southern Bureau, a museum in Kentucky throwing a birthday party for the big bat. It's I don't know what to tell you guys. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a huge bat, like a big old baseball bat. It stands outside the Slugger Museum in Louisville. That bat is 30 years old. They did it up, man. Look at that cake. They had a singing and hats and a card. The bat can't read it, but, you know, people love it. So congratulations to the birthday bat. Coming up, the growing controversy over a tattoo of a Nazi symbol covered up by a Senate candidate. Why he says he's staying in the race. To tonight's Original Now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight, it's a look at the impact scandals have had on political races in the world today. The topic now front and center, the Maine Senate race, taking a controversial turn over a tattoo on a candidate's chest that's recognized as a Nazi symbol. Our Melanie Zanona reports.
In Maine, a high-stakes Senate race is heating up, causing drama for Democrats, now with an extra twist of Nazi symbolism.
My name is Graham Plattner, and I'm running for U.S. Senate in Maine.
Democratic candidate Graham Plattner running to unseat longtime Republican Senator Susan Collins, under fire for a controversial tattoo on his chest, a skull and crossbones symbol historically associated with the Nazis.
I am not a secret Nazi.
The oyster farmer and military vet saying he got the tattoo in 2007 in an interview on the left-leaning Pod Save America podcast this week, saying he was not aware of the symbol's history when he chose it on a night of drinking while serving in the U.S. Marines.
I can honestly say that if I was trying to hide it, I've not been doing a very good job for the past 18 years.
A video circulating shows Plattner dancing without a shirt at what he says was his wedding nearly 10 years ago, the tattoo on full display. In a statement, Plattner telling NBC News in part, "It was not until I started hearing from reporters and DC insiders that I realized this tattoo resembled a Nazi symbol. I absolutely would not have gone through life having this on my chest if I knew that." On Wednesday, Plattner posting a video on social media showing he got the tattoo covered up.
And I got this to cover up the skull and crossbones.
Despite the backlash, some big-name Dems standing behind him.
Impressed that media is so concerned about the tattoo.
Senator Bernie Sanders defending his endorsement of Plattner and bristling when I asked him this.
Do you think it's necessary that he gets it removed or covered up?
Look, once again, we are dealing with a collapsing healthcare system. As a result of Trump's policies, 50,000 Americans may die unnecessarily every year. And you were asking me about whether or not a guy should get a tattoo removed? Sorry.
Plattner also apologized for some old, since-deleted Reddit posts that included downplaying sexual assault concerns in the military.
I made comments that I'm not happy about, that I do not agree with.
The turbulent campaign from the grassroots candidate setting up a showdown for the Democratic primary against a more established current governor Janet Mills, who entered the race just last week with her own powerful backers.
We think that Janet Mills is the best candidate to retire Susan Collins.
With President Trump brushing off scandal after scandal, now candidates on both sides of the aisle bucking critics and sticking in races.
Do you think that scandals are no longer the death sentence that they used to be in political campaigns?
They seem not to be. And that seems to be the biggest difference in this Trump era, with candidates refusing to bow out because they think that they can get beyond this scandal. And many times they're proven right and voters are willing to forgive them.
And another recent tattoo scandal, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth facing tough questions in his confirmation hearings, including about his Jerusalem cross tattoo, a symbol some say is used by religious extremists. Hegseth defended himself, bringing up the funeral of President Jimmy Carter.
On the front page of his program was the very same Jerusalem cross. It is a Christian religious symbol.
And he was confirmed. Now, Democrats are wondering if their oyster farmer candidate can wash away any bad taste.
Mel is joining us now. Bigger picture here. The Senate race in Maine is going to be super closely watched all across the country. Explain that, because the margins in the Senate are pretty tight.
Yeah, Maine is Democrats' best pickup opportunity in the 2026 election. If they don't flip that seat, it becomes mathematically very difficult for for Democrats, I should say, to win back the Senate, because they need to net a total of 4 seats. So that is why this primary has become so critical and quite a dilemma for Democrats. However, that primary is not going to take place until June of next year, so still a long ways to go before they figure it out. Hallie.
That is for sure. And you'll be across all of it, I know, for months to come. Melanie Zanona, appreciate you. Thanks, Mel. Much more to get to here on the show, including coming up what it'll take to keep Broadway's lights on as musicians get ready to maybe go dark and strike tomorrow. We'll explain. Now we're just a few hours away from potentially a bunch of shows on Broadway going dark because musicians on Broadway and the league are locked in contract negotiations. Musicians, you see here, handing out flyers to people going to shows, threatening a walkout, a walk-off if they don't get to a deal by tomorrow morning. That means a strike could be imminent. Shows could be canceled as early as tomorrow. It'd be the first time we've seen something like this in nearly 20 years. And it's especially important now, look at the timing, because this is right ahead of the busiest time of the year for Broadway, the holidays. And they have had a gangbusters season, one of its most successful seasons yet, filling some 15 million seats on Broadway. The strike would affect, almost tons of shows. Every show you'd want to see. Lion King, Hamilton, Wicked, etc. The list goes on. Emily Aketa is covering this one for us. So here we go. Clock's ticking to tomorrow morning. Where do things stand, Emily?
Well, we're certainly in the 11th hour, Hallie. A lot of eyes on this because what is a trip to New York City without a stop to Broadway? I've been hearing from so many people who are trying to pack in as many shows while they can. The musicians say they want to see better health care, more health care contributions, better pay, along with job security. And as you mentioned, they're pointing to the recent success of Broadway. This last season, the highest grossing season on record. Also, we're seeing attendance start to recover since the pandemic. The second highest attendance with millions of people attending and filling theaters like this behind me. You know, what's interesting is oftentimes you might be able to interact with performers, the musicians, the actors after the show. But earlier today at the matinee, you could actually see them out here minutes before going on stage, handing out flyers like these, trying to raise awareness of this potential strike. Some of the causes they're trying to raise awareness of. Take a listen here from a keyboardist. You're supposed to be in the orchestra pit in just minutes, but you're out here doing what?
We're spreading awareness about the musicians and our right to a fair contract. Obviously, people want to come see shows, and we want to play shows for them. But we also have to, make a living and have health insurance and other important things that allow us to live in the most expensive city in the world.
And the Broadway League, which represents the producers and the theater owners, released a statement that says, in part, good faith negotiations happen at the bargaining table, not in the press. We value our musicians, and we're committed to working in good faith to get a fair contract done. We know both sides are currently at the negotiating table, Hallie.
What were the impacts longer term or the last strike we saw? Again, it's been a couple of decades since something like this.
Yeah, exactly. And when they went on strike back in 2007, a strike that was led by the stagehands, we're talking about millions of dollars in lost revenue for the city of New York. This is a cultural touchstone. It's what drives so much tourism here in New York City. And industry experts will point out that the landscape, while we are seeing a bounce back from the pandemic, and it's still challenging because they're seeing rising costs in bringing new productions in particular to life, whether it be in labor, in rent. In fact, the Broadway League says that just 10% of shows right now are profitable. That's about half of historical averages. We know that the Actors Union, which did reach a tentative deal, they made an agreement with the Broadway League over the weekend. They are standing in solidarity, and they say that if the musicians decide to strike, so will they. So will they. Now it's just a matter of waiting and seeing.
I know you'll be all over it. We'll talk again perhaps tomorrow morning. Emily Aketa, thank you very much. Good to see you. Thank you, as always, for watching. That does it for us this hour, but more coverage picks up right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.